All right, cool. Hey, welcome back to the Breaking Bread Village. I have Em here with me. Hey, Em.
Hey.
Want you to just go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of a little bit about yourself, little short, little, something about yourself, and then we'll get started with the conversation.
Yeah, I'm M. I right now I'm working down at the hotel. This is downtown. I just started there about a month ago, and before that I was managing the Live Oak Coffee House, which is just up the street.
Which anybody that follows knows one of my
Yeah,
favorite places.
yes. Anyone who knows you knows Live Oak.
Yes.
It's a very special part of my heart. Absolutely, I love Live
Yeah.
Oak a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of a little bit of my current situation. I'm in a really big transitional season right now, which is just really interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Seeing the time that you caught me is just like a good, like, I don't know, I'm feeling very introspective and very, like, I feel like I'm getting a lot of epiphanies and a lot of, like, clarity on a lot of things, which is, which is good. So
good for you.
You picked the right time, Erin.
Well, good. I try to be in tune with things, and and this is such a fitting time, right? Spring. I always think about spring as this transitional, season,
new beginnings,
new life,
and spring is so rooted in that, like, rebirth, brand new, starting it brand new, like all of this, like you've just come out of this state of, like, dead, of, like, no growing, and all of a sudden everything is like alive. There's so much religion and tradition and everything all circled around that right now, and it's very fitting that my life is also right there. I'm like, of course it would be spring that this is happening when everybody else's life is also doing that. Like, literally everybody in my family is same way, like we're all it's just been really just a big transition season, which I didn't think that my life could be more that way, but it turns out it can be. So
we're always evolving. Like, if people accept that or not, we really are an evolving species. So we have to kind of respect that and honor it and pay attention to that as we're evolving. So I appreciate you coming straight from work.
Of course.
This is not a formal interview.
Yes, this is my work attire. Normally I'd be in, like, painted overalls and a backwards hat.
Yes. That is typically how I'm used to seeing you. So
that's how most people know me. So
no.
They're like,
yeah, so I appreciate you taking that time right after work.
Of course.
So let's get started with this, because I reached out to you because I think myself and other people have so many questions about different things, right? And sometimes we're afraid. Well, I'm not afraid, but I'm saying we as a collective, right, are afraid to ask those questions, right?
Yeah.
And kind of dig in deep with people that are our neighbors. Like, we should want to reach out and know other people. So anyway, tell me a little bit about your beginning, like your life.
Yeah. So I just wanted to touch on the, like, questions.
Sure.
Like, I love that you are talking about that and asking about that, because I'm actually in a season where my family is learning that they can ask questions too.
Good.
And that, like, I don't know, it's very fitting that there's this, like, this topic of, like, asking questions that we feel like we can't ask. And so on that, I would say, ask the question, just ask it respectfully and give space for them to not answer, but ask it. Don't be afraid to ask it. Just ask it humbly and respectfully, and give the space of, if you don't want to answer this question, you don't have to.
No,
know that I'm curious,
Yes. And because for most of us, and I'm speaking for myself as well, we want to honor where people are, right? And sometimes you can't honor that if you don't know, right? So I do respect the fact that people don't, like, some people don't, like, hey, this is not your business, or I'm not in the space to answer that right now.
Right. But I think that if we give them the space to say that, that makes them trust that they can say that. They can say, well, actually, I don't want to talk about that, but thank you for asking. Or, well, now that I know that you have space for me to answer however I feel like I need to answer, I might answer more honestly, and I'm not going to get hurt or offended. So anyway, so as far as my beginnings, I, that pretty typical Christian, what's that word? That, like, that, like, Christian 2.5 kids kind of white family. not 2.5, 4. So I'm one of 4.
Like that traditional Christian.
Yeah, just that very traditional. I was homeschooled my whole life. All of my siblings were. Grew up in a very not. I say the word religion, knowing that there's a lot of nuance there, because religion can mean a religious family is religious without any of the spirit or the heart or the love. Which definitely is there. That's not the kind of religious family I grew up in. I definitely grew up in a very, very loving, very faithful, very spiritual family. That was largely shown through the way we practiced our religion, through the way we practice our Christianity. So, pretty evangelical. Very, I wouldn't say Pentecostal necessarily, but evangelical. You know, the whole point of being a Christian is to go out and save more people. Was that kind of. Tell more people that God loves them, and that God
like
has
missionaries,
that God has a safe space for them, and you know, that was a lot of the language, and my family was very involved. I was very involved, and I'm a pretty tenacious personality, so naturally was picked out as a natural leader, and so was given a lot of responsibility in a lot of the different things that I volunteered in or participated in within the church. So I did grow up very faithful, very evangelical, very faithful, very involved, which naturally came with a lot of harmful perspectives on different people in different walks of life. I would say that I definitely grew up pretty homophobic, and pretty I didn't give a lot of space for anything like that, and didn't even really know what it was.
You just knew it was wrong,
right? Well, I didn't even really learn what gay meant until I was probably 10 or 11, maybe 12. And also I was homeschooled, so that put me growing up with a lot of pretty conservative circles, pretty conservative families. Not anything against that, but in rural areas that can be a pretty closed-minded perspective. Just mostly because you don't experience a lot of other people besides white straight people that are conservative. You know, and so there just wasn't a lot of exposure. So that gives like a little context to how I grew up. When I was in high school, I had finally reached a point where I was like, I can't do this homeschooling thing anymore, because I was so social, and with my ADHD, which I didn't know about at the time, but in retrospect can clearly name, had a really hard time doing my schoolwork and wanted to go take classes. And so, you know, but it was largely on the basis of so that I can go in, share the light, share the love, give the love. You know, we talk about this in youth, sharing love, but I have no one to share the love with because everyone that I'm with already knows Jesus. So why am I not out there? You know, I've always kind of had this, like, I shouldn't be here where everybody already has it. I should be out there where nobody knows or nobody gets it, which again is a pretty, you know, there's a lot of savior complex that comes with that, which I've definitely had to spend a lot of time checking in my life. So,
but at that time it was in good intention.
And that was kind of the main basis as to why my parents were like, okay, let's sign you up for the drama class, and we'll sign you up for the Spanish class, because I wasn't having my mom teach me Spanish, right? There was no way. I was like, absolutely not. I was like, Rosetta Stone, are you kidding me? No, I'm gonna go to a Spanish teacher. So, you know, those were the two big things, and I had a real draw to theater, so I really wanted to do that. So I went there and I did that, and I would say that was my first real exposure to the queer community. There were a couple of classmates, especially in the theater class, which tracks. And in retrospect, I'm like, it took me this long to figure out that I was that, and I was like, I want to go to theater, and I'm like, okay, you couldn't have put 2 and 2 together earlier on. That's okay, funny. But anyways, so that was my first real exposure, and I really loved them. They were fun. We had fun, and I had this big. I can specifically name a couple of big questioning seasons, not like questioning my sexuality, but questioning the perspectives that I was raised on, or the beliefs I was in, the morals. And that was a big season for me, because I was like, these are just normal kids, and they're just doing their life, and nothing about this seems harmful. So why are we treating it as if it's harmful? And so I kind of really started questioning it then, and had kind of reached a point where I was kind of like, why does it? I don't think it matters. I probably would say that it's wrong, but I don't think it matters. And then straight out of high school, I went to just dropped my phone.
That's okay.
It's fun. I went to England.
Okay.
So I got into a Christian theater program over there.
Oh.
And the first year was a gap year, like training year, and then second year I did an internship with the company. And it was a theater and education, so we did a lot of our own. We created our own musicals, our own shows, and we went into schools and we did a lot of it. And half of the shows were pretty, again, evangelical, where we did like an Easter one, but in England and in the cities there's a lot more diversity of faith and of different walks of life. So we had to be really strict about the kind of language that we use. We couldn't say Jesus, like in those schools we can only say God, right? Because that was a more umbrella term, which kind of started introducing this like, oh, okay, so maybe, we Christians have this like belief that like what we know is the only true thing. Like that is the end all, that is it. And that may be true, but also how is that any different than what everybody else believes? A lot of other faiths have that same belief of this is the end. This God is this is the one. And
yeah.
So, and there was one of my crewmates on my first year was a lesbian, and I got to have a lot of conversations with her, and I remember coming home. I was only there for 3 months, came home for my Christmas break, and got into a pretty heated, I wouldn't say angry or attacking or anything. There wasn't any anger or harm, but a pretty heated debate with my mom about some of these like topics of queer and Christianity and is it wrong? Isn't it wrong? And
was that the first time you had that conversation with her?
First time I was playing devil's advocate.
Okay.
I definitely talked to her about it before, but this was the first time where I was like, you might be wrong about this.
You kind of pushed
right.
it. Yeah.
Or we might be wrong about this. Like this person's my friend. Like, how can you say this is like wrong? And so it was a pretty heated debate. And I remember and it was a good conversation. We still ended it with like okay, these are obviously some pretty strong opinions. We still love each other. Like, we're just going to walk away and take some,
Yeah.
But I remember walking away from that and just being like, wow, like, okay, I could have just put myself on a pretty hard journey here. Like, everybody else in my family doesn't really agree or think that it's okay.
Right.
And I feel like it's fine. And actually I felt really like, not only is it fine, I should be celebrating this and honoring it and advocating for this community. And like, because there aren't enough white, straight Christians doing that. And so I felt really passionate about that. And but again, was still like, I'm still straight. I like guys. And then I kind of did my 2 years there, and that was
2 years. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. It was a very, very formative couple of years. I met one of my very best friends there.
Oh wow.
Rachel, which I think you met this summer.
Yeah.
So she was, again, she was my best friend, and she was like, this is no big deal. Like, queer people are just queer. Like, it's just not a thing. And also because it was a religious organization that I was working for, a Christian organization. And I don't say this to generalize, but for this specific organization, the leadership was really bad. Yeah. It was really rough. And there was a lot of Christian religious reasons for things to be handled a certain way that was not justified. It was like, no, you're just saying that because you believe that, but you're still really mistreating these people. You're really mistreating us, and you're really misleading us. And so I came back from England back home and immediately started working for my home church. So went straight back into this home church I was pretty familiar with, but it just had a change in the senior pastor. So from my childhood pastor and pastor's wife, who I would consider a secondary set of parents even now, to this new woman who came in from Indiana, and she's really wonderful. I love her a lot. But there was a lot of transition happening again in this church, and I started working with the after school program and leading that. which I had a lot of passion for because I'm really passionate about children's work and foster care and working with children who don't have safety or resources or anything.
Sure.
Started doing that and working as the administrative assistant. So went straight from acting for a Christian company to being one of the church leaders in this church. One of the more minor ones. I wasn't like a pastor or anything, but I was directing this children's after school program. I was the administrative assistant. I was in all the core meetings. There was a lot. It's pretty intense.
Yeah.
And the church leadership is one of the most unsupported, I would say, positions, jobs out there when it's done genuinely with real spirit and with real heart. That isn't, I'm not speaking about like mega churches that are making lots of money. I'm talking about like the small churches. It's hard work, and you become this, you're instantly in the public eye. From the congregation and from the town that you're in and everything. And I hated it. Because what I didn't know at the time, but in retrospect can see, had started deconstructing my faith. Which was largely started by this new realization of like, well, I grew up being told that being gay was wrong, and that's not true. So what else am I, what else is out there that I have been misled on, or do I need to take ownership of in my own faith? And I felt like I couldn't do that or live that out while leading in a church that had expectations for me. So that was challenging. That was really hard. And I was burnt out very quickly. And had been living with family this whole time. I lived with my mother, my mom, my dad, and my sister, and then I moved in with my brother and his wife. And COVID happened all in that season, so there was
this was not that long ago.
No, this is pretty recent.
Wow.
Yeah. So then after about a year and a half at the church, I went, okay, I miss doing theater. This little small town that I'm in doesn't have anything to offer for me. I want bigger and better. So, and I can just go anywhere I want, but I wanted to stay in the state because I missed my family so much when I went to England. So wanted to be close, but not too close, and all these things. And so Midland looked like a pretty great place. Because of the theater, the public, like the community theater programs that were around. And
so you didn't grow up here?
Okay. No, I grew up in Elma, actually. Yeah, pretty small town. Yeah. So so then I reached out to a mutual friend of my brother, and his wife had a good friend who was living in Midland and working for Live Oak at the time. And I reached out to her and I said, hey, really, really feeling drawn to Midland. What, like, is it a good community? Do you like it? She was like, absolutely. And I'll even put in a good word for you at the coffee shop. She's like, we're hiring right now. It's a really great place to work, and it's a great place to just step into a community. And she's absolutely right. Live Oak is an incredible community builder. Absolutely wonderful. So I applied and got hired and moved here to work at Live Oak and to work at one of the local thrift stores. And took about 3 months at the thrift store, and I went, nope, I'm gonna go Live Oak full time. Full time. Right. Like, I'm going to give all of my time to, all of my working time to Live Oak. And,
cause Live Oak, I mean, it is a community.
It is.
For sure. It's more than just a job. I mean, it definitely is a community.
It is. It was a gift. It was a gift. A wonderful, it still is. It is a living, breathing gift. Live Oak is, does really wonderful things for the community and did wonderful things for me and still does in my life. And so to step straight into this very loving, welcoming, just exist how you want to exist community, put me in a really great place, surrounded by really great people, and also like jump started this identity crisis for me. And on every angle. Like, I was like, I don't know what I believe anymore. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know, because all of a sudden there's nothing around me influencing who I am or who I want to be, or I have no church that has these expectations. I have no family around who are like putting these beliefs or perspectives on me.
Well, you heard different voices, right?
Right.
And that's,
right.
Yeah.
And I had a lot that I was mulling and processing and thinking, but I felt like I had no space to explore it
and process that,
or really like dig into it. So
Yeah.
I was ready. The soil, I guess, in a metaphor, the soil was rich. It was ready to just. And I went through a major faith deconstruction. I mean, huge. I mean, it felt like I was ripping every single moral out and going like, what is this? I don't know if I believe this, like nitpicking every little detail. And really, I mean, I did a lot of research. I did a lot of talking. I did
that had to be hard at times.
It was. It was. I mean, it's really isolating. Going through this, I mean, religion is a foundation. I mean, especially in Christianity, I mean, your belief in God is the foundation of your life.
Well, in every religion that people are raised up in, right? I mean, especially if your whole family and your surrounding community believes the same thing,
right?
It is hard to question those things.
Yeah, it's the foundation of your hope, of your faith, of your path that you're walking. I mean, I grew up believing that there was this purpose for my life,
right? My
whole life, and all of a sudden I was like, maybe I don't have any purpose at all except to exist. That's scary. Like that's a scary thought to have all of a sudden. And so not only was this major faith deconstruction going on, I was also instantly started questioning my sexuality because it didn't matter anymore. There wasn't anybody around to like watch me question it, right? If that makes sense. There wasn't anything hindering. So I immediately started questioning it.
But did you have thoughts before that? That you suppressed or?
Yeah, I mean, it was, there wasn't really much space to even think that way growing up. So to say suppressed I wouldn't say it's the right word because I was pretty ignorant in the sense, like I was ignorantly just living. I was like, there's no other options. And so I'm happy with this option and I'm okay, you know? And then once I went to England and started kind of being like, okay, but there are other options and it's fine. There were a few times where I was like, I might be. And then I was like, no, like I'm just saying that because I'm just like not finding a guy.
Well, and the reason why I asked that is because some people I've spoken with have said, you know, when they were young, they remember having feelings that they didn't understand, but they were there. And then as they got older, they realized, oh, this is,
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a really common experience. Really common. I'd say for me, more what it was. What was suppressed more was less this like, oh, I have these feelings for this person or this type of person. And more, I feel like I can't just like exist as I feel like I want to exist. I mean, I never felt like I fit in as a woman or as a girl, like ever. And to nobody's fault was given this perspective. I just grew up with this mindset of the best thing I can do with my life and the ultimate thing I want. Not only is it the best thing I can do with my life, but it's also what I want to do. Like I long for it is to get married and have kids and raise kids and be a mom and all these things. Which is still, I would say, a big part of who I am. I still have a strong desire to nurture and to raise and to care. But the only way I could achieve that from this upbringing that I got, this perspective that it gave me, the only way to achieve that was to marry a man, a Christian man, and young and settle down and have kids. And that wasn't anything that was ever explicitly said to me. It's just this societal.
It was understood.
It's just this like ingrained, like this is just what it is. This is just how we do it. And I wanted that. I wanted the kids and the mom and the family. I wanted it so bad. And so I just, anytime a guy so much as looked at me, I was like, oh my God. I was like, this is going to be it.
This is it.
This is going to be the father of my children. I was like, I mean, it was bad. I mean, I look back at it and I cringe all the time because I'm like, holy Lord. Like, but that's, you know, that, so does everybody else, you know, or most people are societally trained to have this like ultimate goal of family and children. And so every way that I existed had everything to do with achieving that goal, to be desirable to a man, to make a man think I'd be a really good mom and a really good wife, and all, that he would want to marry me and support me. And so I had to be feminine, and I had to be nurturing, and I had to be funny but not too funny, and I had to be like confident but not too loud, all these checking all these boxes. And I kept watching all of my friends getting it. All my friends got that husband, got those kids. Like, it just kept happening. And I was just like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong? This doesn't make sense. Like, I want this so bad. And I would be so good at it. Why isn't this happening? And then I eventually reached a point where I was like, whatever, I'm going to do my own thing. Like, I want it, but it's not this like thing that I focusing on. And that's when I started feeling like, okay, it's time to leave Alma. It's time to leave Alma and just be who I want to be outside of this small town, outside of these perspectives. And so that turned into questioning my sexuality. And really quickly, I was like, yep, I'm definitely gay, definitely queer, definitely, yep. How did I never realize that before? And I can really clearly look back at conversations that I had or ways that I would perceive something and go, why does it work that way? That doesn't make sense. Or why do I feel this way? That doesn't make sense. And can go, that makes sense. That all tracks now. And so two really big things happening at the same time: major faith deconstruction, major sexuality questioning happening. Like, and I happened to be in this community that didn't care, but cared about you being who you are. Sure. And so didn't care who you were, but as soon as you were like, this is who I am, they're cheering you on. So I was like, okay, I'm queer and I'm about to show up like that. And
how did that impact your relationship with your family?
It was rough. I mean, it still is. It's I think I've mentioned this before in a conversation we had before, but there's so much untalked about grief that happens when someone comes out, or even before that, and that person realizes. There was a lot of preemptive grief that I experienced. There was a lot of grieving that I did before I even told my family, because I knew, like, I understood.
And I want to give a little bit of a backstory, just so people listening understand that we had this conversation in a small, intimate group, with people sharing these stories. And the part about the grieving process is that, I don't know if it was me or somebody mentioned it, about how, sometimes parents, family members will grieve, right? During that process, they grieve, the expectations that they hoped for, right? So that means, the wedding dress and walking down, not that you can't have a wedding dress, but I'm just saying, right? Or these different ideas that people put together.
Right. Yeah. You grieve the visions, the dreams, the goals, the what could be, and you grieve what was.
Right.
You grieve like, oh, like, I thought that I liked X, Y, and Z, but it turns out I just liked that it made me feel like I fit in. And I don't actually like X, Y, Z. And so with the grieving, at least on my part, came a lot of re-looking at everything and going, okay, yes, I do like this, or yes, this is a part of who I am, or this is a part of my moral standings, and this doesn't fit with how I think, or no, I actually don't like this, or I don't, and for a long time there, I was like, I have no idea who I'm going to be on the other side of this. Like, I'm really just ripping it all apart. And I'm a pretty transparent person, and whether I explicitly talked about it with my family or not, they could see that was going on.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right. They could see the, like, I don't know who I am right now, and I don't know who I'm going to be. Like, and so there's this whole big grieving for them of, like, I mean, I had a really meaningful conversation with my mom just a couple weeks ago.
Oh, good.
Kind of talking about, like, for the first time, where she was actually asking these questions that she felt like she couldn't ask. And I was like, no, ask them. Like, and and kind of brought up a couple of like traditions that we used to do as a family that were centered around different religious beliefs, or a couple of things that we would do together, like tea parties. Like me and my mom would do tea parties, and I absolutely love them, and I would still 100% do a tea party. Like I love them. They're so fun. Like I would dress up, drink tea, you know, but this like little girl who loved wearing dresses and loved making flower crowns and doing tea parties and dressing up and all these things. My mom has spent the last year grieving like this person that she loved spending time with, who loved spending time with her, these things that we would bond over, and grieving all of it, thinking that it was all gone, right? Because not only was I questioning my sexuality, but out of that spurred this whole identity crisis, and specifically with my gender and just who am I, you know? And I wasn't as transparent with my family about that when it was happening, because I knew how painful it would be, right? And I was like, I just want to figure it out for myself, and then we can and then I'll
well, because you didn't have all the answers
right
yet, so
I didn't, and like in some ways I still don't, I'm still figuring it out. It's very transitional, it's very evolve, everything is changing, everything is evolving, and but yeah, the grief is intense, and you know, I think all members of my family are grieving it in different ways, and that's okay. That's valid. I get it, because I've grieved and I am grieving. You know, there's still grieving happening on my end too.
Because grief is not always this negative, and I mean, it has some hard moments, but sometimes people hear the word grief, they instantly go to this negative space. Right. And grief is just really just that losing that part, right? Someone or a way of life or what have you. So and we all go through it in some kind of way.
No, it's processing that this no longer will be. And it will be different moving forward. And the sadness, the natural sadness that comes with that. And that's totally valid. And I think that a lot of families do the grieving separately, and they don't do it together, which in a lot of ways sometimes that's needed and necessary, but also sometimes, you know, let's all do ourselves a favor and try to grieve together, and we can process this together in some ways. And so there, you know, there's distance. I mean, there definitely is. Being a non-binary queer is definitely really isolating.
We'll talk about that, because earlier, you know, you said that you knew you were lesbian, right? And so when did you evolve into understanding it differently?
So it kind of just didn't stop.
Okay.
So I went from I'm bi to I'm lesbian to I might not be a girl to maybe I'm a boy to no, I'm a girl. And it kind of did this maybe I'm boy, maybe I'm a girl, maybe, and it kind of just
teeter-totter.
And it kind of I feel like I found this balance now of I'm pretty happy where I am, but it's only been about a year and a half since I came out to my family about being I officially came out as bi.
Okay.
But then throughout different conversations, I'm bi, but I like girls way more than guys.
No, do you think that you said that you were bi because it's almost like that's still almost like a safety net, because there's still this hope of I could be, you know, I could still like boys, I could still like. Do you think you said it to them to?
Maybe. I think there was a lot that went into it. I think that I came out a little too soon.
Okay.
I think that I hadn't given myself enough time to process it, but also I am the kind of person that's it's easier to just let people know that change is happening.
Take advantage of
rather than let all the change happen and then bombard them with it.
Which they'll see it and feel it anyway.
Right.
I mean, we can see things and feel things. Even if people don't give words to it.
Yeah. And so it just kind of just kept transition. It's really the place that I've landed at now, and that I've been at for probably a half a year now, is really there's a lot of fluidity to my identity. If you want an official term, it would probably be that I'm gender fluid. because some days I feel a little bit more one way and some days I feel a little bit more the other way, but the spectrum's pretty small.
Okay. Explain gender fluid a little bit more for people who aren't familiar with
right.
that.
So there's like, there's trans, which is this umbrella a term for anyone who is not cisgender. So cisgendered meaning what you were assigned at birth, right? So there's female assigned at birth, male assigned at birth, right? Which is like literal sex, like your literal genitalia, right? Like if we're talking about specifics, right? So there's those two that are assigned at birth, and that if you grow up or you even as a child you go, I was assigned female and I am a female, then that's cisgendered. That is, I identify with what I was assigned at birth. And then there's transgendered, which is I don't identify with what I was assigned at birth. And that can mean many, many things. So there's transsexual or trans, which is the umbrella term. And within that, there's trans male, trans female. And I'm, I could be misquoting things here, so don't completely quote me on this.
No, listen, we all listen. This is an
ongoing conversation. I love to learn and be educated more, and I'm sure that I will look back over this conversation and go, "Wow, I totally said that wrong." There's a better way to say that. But as far as I know now, there's that umbrella term of trans, and then there's trans woman, trans male. Then there's this non-binary umbrella within the umbrella that kind of talks about this idea of neither or both, or like the gender is a spectrum. So you have female and you have male, and there's this whole spectrum of how you could fall in between. And for some people, the spectrum is I fall smack dab in the middle, and I'm not either. And that would be like a gender neutral or a non-binary, which is technically what I would say identify as. But gender fluid is within the non-binary umbrella, meaning that some days I feel a little bit more male than I do female, and some days I feel a little bit more female than I do male, and some days I feel really neither, and some days I feel really both. And it sometimes it changes week to week, sometimes it changes season to season, sometimes it'll change hour to hour. I mean, literally I'll put on an outfit and then an hour later that feels right, and an hour later I go, don't feel this anymore. This is not how I'm feeling inside. And so it's pretty, it's a pretty fluid state. And I think that if I'm speaking honestly, I think that humans are way more fluid, way more non-binary than we ever really give credit to, in the sense that our society is very left or right, black or white, like, up or down. Like it's very just like very one or the other, in so many ways. And you go to college, you don't go to college, or just all those kinds of things. And that's not humanity. That really isn't, because like you said, to be human is to always evolve, to always change. And so I would say that I have a lot of fluidity in my life, in my identity, in who I'm attracted to and who I'm not attracted to. Sometimes it literally changes day to day, but not in the sense that I've changed my mind, but in the sense of like brains are changing and growing, and bodies experience different things that make you feel different things. And there's a lot of unknowns in life, and a year from now, 3 years from now, I'm going to feel differently than I do now about who knows what, and that's normal. That's okay. And I think that as long as we're willing to look back and go, yeah, that's how I felt then, but I didn't know what I know now. And I hadn't grown in the ways that I've grown now, or I didn't experience what I've experienced now. So, but here I am. I've grown and I've changed, and I think that we need to get a lot better at being comfortable with fluidity and healthy ambiguity. There's ambiguity that isn't healthy, but I think this kind of gray fluidity is just normal. So I would say like the season that I'm in now, I'm very gender fluid, very non-binary, which means that any pronouns work, but I say they them because it is quicker to explain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I just kind of am neither, both, whatever. And I'm attracted to pretty much anybody, but also
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
but also not, because, you know, it's like, it's a spectrum and it changes. And, you know, my partner is non-binary as well. So, you know, that makes things easier. We get each other really well, which is nice. But yeah, so it, you know, it's created during the really big, like, ripping apart who I was and not knowing what was going to stay with me and what was going to go. Definitely creates a lot of distance.
Yeah.
Specifically with me and my family. And I feel like I have moved out of that season and going, okay, I feel like I know who I am now, and really the important things haven't changed.
Right.
Like the big things about who I was then and who I am now haven't changed.
How do you feel in regards to Christianity now? Like, how is your relationship?
Yeah, so
within that?
I would consider myself not religious. From my personal perspective and my personal experience, religion puts a box around the real spiritual experience it is to be human. I think that religion can bring in a lot of hoops, a lot of unnecessary hoops, and a lot of harmful traditions. And I wouldn't, that's a general statement.
Yeah.
I think there's still, I think there's a lot about different religious beliefs or religious practices that are good and helpful and healing. But I also think that there's a lot of harm that's done.
Yeah, I always like to say that when we talk about religion, because I too grew up Christian, and you know, I talk about it a lot, my experience, right? And I think it's important for people to be able to speak about their experiences, but I never want anyone within a faith to feel like it's an attack at all.
No.
Yes. I always like to just say that, just because some people hear people's walks and their journeys and say, oh, why would you say that about, you know, like if I say I have a bad experience in the town I live in, people think you're talking about the town. It's like, no, it just wasn't, it was my experience.
Yeah, it's not personal. It's just it's just an experience. And again, I don't say that out of any specific deliberate harm that I experienced. It's through a lot of hearing a lot of other people's stories and questioning outside of what we're allowed to question, or what I was allowed to question growing up in the Christian faith. And so right now I would not consider myself religious in the sense that I practice any kind of religion. However, I am a deeply spiritual human being, deeply spiritual, very engaged with God or the universe or whatever name or title you have, for what I believe is a greater being out there that is engaged, that's engaged in our lives, engaged what's going on out here in all of our worlds, and a firm believer in that, and am eager. I'm always eager to learn or discover new ways to engage and to develop that relationship and that friendship. I mean, and it's been really great to have more conversations with my mom about that. My mom is a deeply my whole family are deeply spiritual. They just, they practice that very, very much within their faith. And there's nothing wrong with that. I sometimes we just have different ways of different languages for what I think sometimes is the same thing. Right. Yeah. So I think this idea of, do no harm, take no crap, is the filtered version of that sentence. Is a big sentence that I live my life by, of like, don't harm anybody, don't tell anybody that they're wrong or that but if they're harming somebody else, then it's like, okay, let's talk about this. Like, we need to be gentle and kind and not harmful. We need to talk about the basic rights that everybody has, right? But also, sorry.
No, go ahead, finish your thought.
But please. Also, like standing up for myself and my beliefs and hey, this religious practice that I just engaged with did not serve me and actually made me feel unsafe in these ways. Like, so I'm not going to engage with it anymore. But that's not me saying you can't. That's just me saying it's not serving me, and that's not going to work for me. And maybe someday it will again, and that's okay. But for right now, I am finding my own ways that this is serving me, and that looks like just a lot of, honestly, a lot of really meaningful conversation.
No,
And a lot of,
I think it's great. I appreciate you for um, sharing your experience. You know, I am a person, I like to understand people, right?
yeah,
I like to understand why people, you know, just kind of do what they do. I think it's important for us to glean from each other and grow, right?
Right.
With each other.
Right.
So I guess in as we start to close this, you know, do you feel happier? Do you feel more at peace now? I mean, I know you're kind of, you're almost you know, they always have that saying when you're down in the valley. You know, when you're up top, you know, it's a little different than when you're down in it, right? In that battlefield. Do you, I mean, you're kind of in that right now because you're still filtering things out, but do you feel more at peace?
Yeah, that's a really good question. In a lot of ways, I feel so much more, at peace in who I am or how I'm choosing to exist in the environments around me, and choosing to show up the ways that I'm choosing to show up for myself, and the ways that I'm choosing to show up for the people around me. I feel more connected and fulfilled by myself than I ever have before, which is a really wonderful experience. With that also comes the letting go of the things that aren't a part of that anymore, and that can be really small things, like really small little habits, like the way that I'm gonna do my morning routine, right? But that can also mean letting go of really big things like friendships or lifestyles, or like old things that you used to do all the time that were really fun, but they're actually harmful for me now, or harmful for the people around me. So with that comes this heaviness, I would say heaviness and grief of, like, it is sad to grieve like some of these things that I'm choosing to not have a part of my life anymore, because they are harmful, because this way of engaging, or this way of having a friendship or relationship, or this habit is harmful, and I'm choosing to let go of that, and to move away from that. And that's hard work. It's hard work in a lot of ways, especially when friendships and relationships are involved.
Sure.
And I think that, you know, it's interesting to discover which groups of people respond to that in a way of, like, you know what, like, I can see that you are doing what's best for you, or what's best for people around you, like, and maybe that means that our relationship has to look a little differently, or you know, but like, you're doing what's best for you, so I you know, I support it, or I have space for that. And which ones go, well, I don't even know who you are anymore, I don't know, you know. And it's not that I've gotten a lot of that, but you know, sometimes it all of a sudden makes other people in your life feel like you don't have any space for them, and that's not true. It's that I don't have space for harmful behavior or harmful habits. And so if you are choosing to show up with harmful behaviors,
which to some people don't feel like it is harmful, right? So it's this
and it's like, are you willing to have a conversation? Are you willing to see? Are you willing to discuss, like, hey, like, this is the way that I've been harmful, this is the way you've been harmed, this is the way that we've harmed each other. Let's move away from that. And that's going to be hard and uncomfortable, but I like to believe, and I work hard to be someone who is always like, you can always come to me and say, hey, this way that we've existed in our friendship or in our relationship has been harmful, and we need to move out of it. And if you want to maintain a friendship with me, I need it to be different, or I need to be better.
It's okay to speak up.
And I think, like, just being willing to go, you know what, I can see how that was harmful, and let's have a non-emotional conversation about it, and
which is hard. Which is hard, right? Let's be real.
Right.
But you know, I mean, one thing that I found even for myself is that the path to self-discovery, you always lose some people along the way.
You do.
It's just kind of what it is.
You do.
And you have to grieve that and process that.
Right. And you have to take inventory all the time. You take inventory of who am I not willing to lose? And to what lengths will I go to keep them? Right.
That's for sure.
Or what lengths will I go to not keep somebody. Like
Yeah.
this inventory is, it's not something that we're really good at as
And
humans.
we all have to do that, right? I mean, we all have to do that. So, in closing, what would you say to someone who possibly is kind of on that path of self-discovery? Like, what would you tell someone? Yeah.
Honestly, I think the best thing you can do for yourself is to put intentional time, like set time aside to sit with it. Like sit in the grief, sit in the feeling, sit in this feels so heavy and so painful and so sad. Give yourself time to sit in it and process it and take inventory and go, okay, like this is needed, this is necessary, but and trust that by sitting in it, by acknowledging the feelings, and then choosing what to keep based off what's serving you, and choosing what to get rid of based off what isn't serving you anymore, will be life-changing and will do amazing things for your relationship with yourself, first of all, and amazing things for the environment that you build around yourself and the people that you build around yourself. So, but that has to start with you, taking time with yourself and processing and taking inventory, and there's a lot of humbling that happens there, a lot of going, I've been really harmful to myself, and I've been really harmful to the people around me in these ways, and that's terrible, you know. So let yourself feel the grief, let yourself feel the humility, and sit in it, and then take that and take the steps and move forward. But give yourself the space. If that means saying no to hanging out with a friend that you miss, then say no and sit with it. Like, you have to prioritize that relationship. You have to prioritize giving yourself what you need first before you can work on the relationships around you, the community around you.
Oh, awesome. Well, with that, I think that's a good place to close. I appreciate you for sharing your story, your heart,
Thank you
your
for
experience.
having me.
Yeah. No, I appreciate this. So thank you so much, and until next time.
Yeah, of course.
Come break bread with me. Break bread and be free. Come break bread with me. Conversationally. Open your mind. Now is the time.